My name's Janine, I'm from the Debt Advice Service, and this is the first episode of our podcast. It's called the Debt Diaries, and it's about when real people get into debt. And luckily, I've wrote my lovely friend Rachel of 20 odd years into doing the first step with me. And Rachel, you've got a big old story to tell me.
Yes, I have.
So Rachel, we met 25 years ago.
Yep.
You've worked in radio for a long time. And when was it that it first started, you sort of falling into debt?
So, it was when I was at uni, and I think it all started when, obviously, you get your student loan. So I was like, oh, right, okay, this is great. And you kind of just, in those days, you could just blitz it on whatever. You pay a bit of your kind of student fees for accommodation and all that sort of stuff. Then you'd end up just going to the academy, to the big market and just buying stuff. So it started with that, really. And, you know, it was just small amounts of money. But then I remember getting something through the post from my bank, which was like, you know, you can apply for a credit card. And I was like, oh, right, yeah, I might do that. So filled in the details, got my first credit card and just went around buying a few bits. And it was just like clothes and going out, that kind of like student life, just kind of making sure that I was, you know, living the life that I wanted to live. So
how much was that one then, do you know?
Do you know what? It wasn't very much that. It was quite a small amount, because I think to begin with, it may have changed now, but you get given your limit, and then it's whether you're paying it back. And then they'll increase your limit, which I was doing at the time. And I don't even really know how it began to spiral out of control. But over the next few years, I would be offered more credit cards. You'd get things through the post saying, you know, you can have X amount on this credit card. So I was like, oh, right, yeah, I might do that as well. And in the meantime, I'm obviously getting the more student loans. And I've got a job, a part-time job, so I'm able to pay these little bits off. So it's like they just would keep offering me more and more.
Letting the rope out a bit.
Yeah, and then with credit cards, and it's still the same now, you'll get an offer of 0% kind of interest on maybe purchases or balance transfer sort of thing. So what I'd do is go, oh, right, well, I'll apply to that one and I'll just transfer this balance over. But then they'd give me extra to spend. So then I'd fill that one. And then it would just continue. And then I think I looked at a loan, and I was looking at getting a car. So I thought, right, well, if I can maybe get a loan to get a car, and I did look at kind of APRs and see which was the lowest interest rate and stuff. And over the period of time that I was accumulating the debt, I know that I bought 2 cars on tick. So
separately or at the same time?
No, separately.
Oh, I'm thinking, which one shall I drive today?
So I would get the finance to do that, and obviously that had like a kind of APR on it, and then I'd have a credit card debt as well building up, and then I'd go, oh right, I can get a loan, and they just keep lending me bigger amounts. So say it would be like I'd have like $3,000 to pay on the car. I'd have maybe by this point $4,000 on a credit card, and then I'd go to the bank and they'd go, yeah, we'll lend you that amount. And then I'd go, what about if I just lend another couple of grand just for me?
Yeah.
For me, to just keep spending. And then I'd pay off the car and I'd pay off the credit card, and then I'd have this bit spare, and I'd just keep spending. And the sad thing is, apart from the car, I never really had that much to show for it. Yeah. I just kind of like was buying bits that I would go on holiday. And then if I was in a relationship or was out with friends, I'd be like, oh, I'll get that. And I still am a bit like that now. I'm generous, but I would almost maybe buy stuff that I knew I couldn't really afford. But I would get that little buzz where people get a buzz, don't they, when they go, you talk about like that retail therapy, and you go and you buy yourself something new and you're buzzing about it. And then I just kind of, and I knew that I was starting to get into a situation where I would look at what my real outgoings were for maybe rent and food shopping and bits and bats, and then I would look at my debt that I was having to pay off. And I was always trying to find a way to kind of make that, if it started to go into like more than one thing, one payment, I would try to like get a loan.
Consolidate it.
That's the word, consolidate, yeah. Yeah, I would keep consolidating it.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I was almost getting on top of it a little bit and I had that just one payment, something else would come through and it's like I just couldn't say no. And I'd just say, I'll just see if I can apply for this. And I would, and I'd get accepted. So I'd have this consolidated chunk of debt, and then I would get another card, and then I'd start spending, and then the 0% or whatever the kind of introductory rate was would go, and then I'd be like, oh God, I've got to pay interest now. Well, it'd actually be easier to just consolidate again, and it would just keep going and going and going. And at times I would feel really stressed about it, and then I'd just bury my head in the sand, which I think is and
I think that's really normal, to be honest.
Really normal thing to do. And something would come up like, oh yeah, I can go on that holiday, I can do this, I can buy that. And I would just do it, because really at that time I was renting, I wasn't trying to buy a house or anything. And it's only kind of over the years, and this went on for, I think it turned into about 10, 12 years.
Really?
Yeah. And it just built up and built up to a point where I was kind of looking over going, oh my God, like how am I going to get myself out of this situation? And then I would start to get upset about it. And then I would kind of just go, no, I can actually remember, I remember things like, I remember I had a car accident and I got a whiplash claim for £3,000. Now, really, that should have just gone on the debt.
Yeah.
And just kind of pay that off. But it didn't. I would just carry on and spend that, and then be like, oh, I probably should have maybe, I remember getting a bonus in work and I could have cleared a lot of my debt off with it, and I didn't.
Why then? Why did you not sort of go, right?
I feel like maybe I was so overwhelmed by the amount of debt I was in at this point that...
How much was it about roughly at that point?
Okay, so obviously it started from when I was at uni, just a couple of grand.
Yeah.
And by 10, 12 years later, I think my end amount before I actually kind of got a grip on it was around £32,000.
Blooming heck, that's crazy, isn't it?
And honestly, you could have said to me, lay out in front of me what you've actually got for this. I probably wouldn't even be able to show you anything. A couple of bangers that were probably in the scrapyard by then.
Yeah.
But really, nothing. Not even designer shoes or anything. How disappointing.
Yeah.
So, and it was at that point that I was like, if I want to buy a house and also the other thing that starts to happen is the credit cards and the banks that have been going, lend this, borrow this, here you go, they start to draw it back.
Yeah.
And the offers start to be withdrawn, like the 0%, or they go, yeah, you can have this credit card, and okay, so you've got a debt of £8,000 on this credit card that's got an APR going on it of whatever, so your minimum payment is £90 a month.
Yeah.
And then you've got your interest on it. So you think, oh, I'll just transfer it onto this, and you apply for that credit card, and they go, oh, yeah, your credit limit's £1,000, and you go, oh my God. So I've still got to cover this other £7,000 on 0%. And then that's when I started. Obviously, I was looking at loans and stuff, because I thought, yeah, it's a bit of a higher APR, but it's one payment, and I'd think I could handle it, but actually I couldn't.
It's so hard because I think we didn't learn about finances as kids. And I remember when I was 19, and I got my first credit card, and I remember I had a job, my wage was rubbish, and I was seeing my mates that lived in Birmingham, at uni, and I saw the same situation, saw a credit card, I thought, yeah, I'll have a bit of that.
Yeah.
So I filled in the form and thought, great, it's free money.
Yeah.
So I go to the cash till, draw money out, I go and buy myself a new outfit. Same situation as you, I didn't really want to turn up empty-handed.
Yeah.
So I'd turn up with a bag full of booze, the party's here, because I was staying at their house. And, I felt like excited.
Yeah.
You know, like being able to
That
go
little
in
buzz.
a shop after
Yeah, yeah.
all that time of like not being able to afford to buy stuff, just going into like, you know, a shop and getting like a proper nice outfit
Yeah.
and not having to worry about where that money was coming from.
Yeah.
And my mum had always sort of said to me, don't get a credit card, don't do this. And I remember like it came through like the letterbox, you know, that she's like, what's that? I was like, nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then she made me open it in front of her. And at this stage, I mean, this was about, I think it was about £1,000, but obviously she like told me off, luckily bailed me out at the time, paid it off, and then I had to pay her back. And that kind of like was like an early lesson really.
Yeah.
But, you know, I kind of felt like I'd had my fingers wrapped. But I think that's the thing, isn't it? And I think it's that sheer excitement when you feel like you've got a bit of cash and it feels like free money, but it's not.
It's really not.
It's the opposite of free money, isn't it?
And I think unless there is someone there to intervene, I think I was quite secretive about it because I secretly knew that what I was doing was getting myself into more and more debt. And I'd go, oh, no, it's fine. No, I've just done this. Or sometimes I'd go, no, I've just consolidated it. And my mum would be like, oh, right, okay. You know, but she was
Do you think she knew then, your mum, or not?
I don't think she knew to the extent that I was getting myself into it. And the other thing to say is those variables of you get a credit card and it's 0% on maybe purchases or a balance transfer. The minute you go and draw money out on that offer is gone. The minute you miss a payment, that offer is gone. So before you know it, you've kind of gone, oh God, you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul, and then it all just blows up because those offers, those 0% that you kind of like feel a bit chuffed about because you've got that for 12 months. If you make one mistake, and I say it's a mistake, but it's difficult because I did it from a point where I was just enjoying myself. People sometimes they're in much more desperate situations. My situation wasn't a desperate situation where I needed to put food on somebody's plate. I was just kind of having fun. But I think it's like you've got to be so aware of what the restrictions are of the particular credit card or whatever it is that you're borrowing from, because if you don't make that payment or you go kind of off on a tangent with it, you're going to end up losing the offer or paying more like down the line. So it's just, and I know that I was doing that. I go, oh God, I've forgotten to make that payment. And then you'd ring them up and go, oh, I'm really sorry. And they go, well, you've kind of like forfeited the offer.
The good bits.
Basically. So,
so did anybody else know then? So your mum didn't really know?
I moved out kind of part way through. This is the other thing, I was at home. I didn't even really have any bills. I was like, what the hell? And then I moved out and I kind of looked and I was like, okay, well, I can afford this bit of rent. And then I just continued to build the debt up on the side. And it was my brother that kind of was like, what's your situation? I don't know why the conversation came up, and he was like, how much debt are you actually in? And I was like, I don't know, I'm not sure, because you feel embarrassed that you've kind of got yourself into that state. And he said to me, show me what debt you're in. When I next see you, show me like, and I was like, oh my God. And I knew he wouldn't let it lie. I knew he wouldn't. So, and I'm kind of, although at the time I was like, oh my God, I'm glad. But I remember sitting down with him and I'd written it all down. And this is when I realised I was somewhere in the region of like 32,000. And I remember I just started crying. And he was and he went, but Rach, you've spent the money. He went, so you need to pay it back. And I was like, I don't know how to do it. And he was like, okay. And he actually did me an Excel spreadsheet.
That's what we all need. We all need someone who's going to do us an Excel spreadsheet.
That's going to do an Excel spreadsheet. And he like obviously did my outgoings as what they were.
Yeah.
What my income was at the time. And he said, right, you can realistically afford to pay this much off per month. He said, and I can't remember how it all worked out at the time. I don't even know if I consolidated again just to kind of have it as one thing. And he was like, you do not lend any money now at all. This is it. You've got to just get on top of this. And I did. I made a plan, and it was very boring and quite painful, and I had to be quite strict with myself. But I did it, And the end result was, it was almost like it came full circle in the end, but because of what actually happened, because of all those loans that I had got. And I found a piece of paper with, it was a PPI payment.
Yeah.
So I'd got all these loans over these years, and I'd always taken protection out on them. I think you were always encouraged to do that at the time. And because there were quite large amounts, the payment protection was like £100 a month. So I was able to get all those loan numbers and send them back to the bank. And I thought, I won't get anything back. And I was making the payments, and I still probably had about 15 grand to pay off. And then I got this letter from my bank with the PPI payment on it.
Well, don't tell me. What we're going to do is...
Okay.
Stop right there. We're going to find out. You've got all of these PPIs, you've got all of these loans. In 1 second, we're going to find out how you managed to just get rid of that massive chunk of £32,000 and get it back to zero.
Yeah.
But you did it. There's a happy ending, and we'll find out in a second.
Okay.
Don't bury your head in the sand if you've slipped into debt. Give us a call at the Debt Advice Service now and take that first step to becoming debt-free. Our friendly advisors are here to listen, and they'll be able to tell you what your options are and how to move forward. We've got over 1,800 glowing Trustpilot reviews from our grateful customers that felt supported when they needed it the most. Don't struggle on your own. Go to our website, thedebtadviceservice.co.uk, or call us now on 01706 404 143. Welcome back to the Debt Diaries. Rachel just shared with us that she was £32,000 in debt. She's actually got the proof right here. Let's have a look at them all.
How weird though that I've even kept these. Maybe like some weird... It says a lot about me.
No, I think it's a good thing to do, because I think it's remembering what happened. Yeah. So go on, talk us through what you've got there.
I mean, look, that's half of one. That must have been a moment of like, I'm going to get rid of this one. But these are like, God, they're dating back, and you can just see how many times, and that's only some of them, by the way. There are more. Gosh. When I obviously wanted to, when I made the decision to clear my debt, I went on to
like 10 there.
Experian as well to get my credit score, which was not actually horrendous because I'd borrowed so much and paid back. And in some ways that's a good thing to do, providing you're kind of clearing it each time. But
did you know much though about your credit score? Because that, I don't think I was really that aware when I was younger.
At the time, no. But when I looked, I remember it had like the list of lenders. And it was like...
Because it just lists them all, doesn't it, how much the debt is? 4 pages of like just all these credit cards that I'd obviously kept, because I kept consolidating, they'd be cleared, but there were absolutely loads of them. That's just some of them. Yeah.
And like I was talking about before with the PPI, I was able to get PPI from my bank for loans, and I did get a little bit back on credit cards, but the main thing was the banks, because you had the protection and you were encouraged to take it. And in some ways, it, like I was saying, it came full circle, because I'd been ploughing my money back in to pay my debt off, and I feel like the universe met me halfway and was like, okay, so you're doing your bit now. They sent me a letter to say, if you've had any loans, it was a big thing, wasn't it, the PPI a while ago?
Massive, yeah. I got one as well.
Yeah,
my credit card.
I filled in and this is another thing where, although I look like a slight mad woman for keeping all these cards.
I don't think you are. I think that's like a little reminder to say, don't do it again. Yeah.
I'd kept all of my loan number, my paperwork.
Yeah.
So I was able to go back to it, because a lot of the time you think, oh, I don't need that anymore, bin it, shred it.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre, because there were a couple of things where I was going to the bank, have you got this information? And they didn't have it. And I'm like, well, I kind of need that to be able to just clarify that I've got everything covered in terms of what I've paid PPI on. And I think I've got 4 or maybe even 5 loan numbers, which must have been all consolidating loans that I'd got. So and at the time I'd moved in with my boyfriend at the time, and we were obviously halving our outgoings doing that, and it was much cheaper from, where I'd been before. So that's why I'd been able to kind of pay some more of my debt off. And I remember a letter came through, and I opened it, and I read it, and I was like, okay, so they're going to pay you. And I rang my mum, and I said, Mum, I need to read this out to you because I feel like it can't be real. Bearing in mind, I had about 14 grand left to pay. And this letter said, thank you for applying for the PPI. Just to let you know, we're going to make you a payment of £9,800.
Oh my God.
And I was like, yes. So I was like, Mum, is this real? Is this real? So and they paid me that. So I still had this chunk, right? And part of it was that, as well as having credit cards, loans, I also had an overdraft, and I think that was at £2,000. And to this day, I can't have an overdraft because I just feel like as soon as your money goes into it, it's just not yours anymore.
Yeah, no, it's true. And also, it's dead expensive now.
Yeah.
You pay 40% on your overdraft.
Yeah, God, I mean, I don't even know because I've just not had one since. But I had this overdraft, and I had this chunk just left, and I was like, I've got to get myself. I was so kind of inspired then to get myself sorted and just be at zero. I didn't even care if I didn't have £1 in the bank. I just didn't want any debt.
Yeah.
And I hosted loads of events over Christmas, and I was really tired. At the time I was doing the breakfast show, and then I was hosting in the evening, and I did it all the way through December, through into obviously New Year and stuff. And then I got my paycheck for that, and that was when I was completely clear. And
so how did it feel then? Because obviously that
so
was like an axe hanging over your head for years. Like 32 grand is a lot of money.
Yeah.
How did it feel?
A lot of waste as well. Can you imagine what I could have bought?
I know.
Or like a deposit on a house. Or,
yeah.
It was just crazy. It felt so good. It felt so good, and it really taught me a lesson to. And it's really it's such a it's not if you says don't live beyond your means because and if someone had said that to me years ago, shut your face. But really now, I kind of think if you want,
resonates.
It does resonate, but only because I was in such a bad place with debt. It's been such a lesson for me that. Don't get me wrong, I have a credit card now, but if I spend on that credit card, I know I'm going to be able to pay it off, or I'm going to have a plan and I can transfer onto a 0%, but I'm very strict about it. Mm-hmm. I've never looked at a loan since.
Can I ask you how much your credit card is now?
I think it's about £3,000.
Okay, yeah. That's the average now, between 3 and 4 grand is the average credit card.
And there's a bit of me that's slightly annoyed with myself. I am slightly irritated. It irritates me that it's there, floating around in the background.
Yeah.
But I know that I can pay it, but it still bugs me a little bit. I'm kind of like, I like to just have no debt at all. And that temptation still being offered, and they if I can borrow quite a lot of money, and I've got a brilliant credit score now.
Because you paid it all back.
Because I paid it all back. But, it's just kind of being strict with yourself and not living beyond your means, which is a difficult thing to do.
Do I really need it? Because I think, sometimes I go into schools now and teach kids about credit cards. And if you use them properly, they can really go in your favour. Like they say to use below half of your balance, so a third if you can. Also, it is good for your credit score. If you use that little bit, then you pay it back and you're sort of showing good signals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is it is the temptation, and it is good for protection. So now I will book our holidays on the credit card because if something happens with the company, if they go bust, or
you're covered.
If it's something that's their fault, you're covered. It's insured. But I know exactly what you're saying. I didn't have a credit card. We got ours, I think, about a year ago. And I'd not had one since I was 19 years old, just because I just didn't want that temptation. And, you know, the fact that you can just go, just chuck it on the credit card. So I think, you know.
It's a slippery slope, and it's so easy to be on that slope, and it can happen so quickly.
To so many people.
Yeah, and it's difficult because people, you know, we're in a cost of living crisis, and people just, sometimes it is literally, you know, very well saying, oh, you know, don't live beyond your means. Sometimes that is doing the food shop, or buying something for your kids that they need for school, or, you know, and
things happen, things break.
Yeah, of course.
People lose their jobs, people get ill. There are loads of reasons why, you know, people get into debt. It's
And I suppose just from my experience, like I said before, mine was I was just having a good time. But I literally had nothing to show for it. And I just think, God, how sad is that? To have that much debt and have nothing to show for it. And I've kind of like come full circle, and it's cleared, and I just have a little bit, and I know that I can manage that and pay it off. But yeah, God, what a lesson.
And thank God for your brother, because he basically straightened you out, got you budgeted right, you need to pay this back.
Excel sheet, yeah. But I always remember as well, I used to go into it every month, and I used to really, it's such a satisfying feeling to go in and like
see the numbers go down.
See that those numbers come down. But it was a long process, you know. I was kind of doing that for a good few years before that PPI came in.
How long did it take you to pay it off then in total?
Oh God, it must have been maybe 4 years, because I know sometimes if I did get a chunk, I would pay it.
That's
I
good.
obviously had a monthly amount, and it was horrible because I would be thinking, God, what I could get with that.
Look what you could have won.
Here's what you could have won, little speedboat. But you know, it's kind of a bit bittersweet, but you know, it was worth it in the end.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to anybody who's sort of like on the slide a bit going into debt? What would you say to them to do? Apart from speak to your brother.
I have a hotline to my brother. And an Excel spreadsheet. Look, like I said before, don't live beyond your means. And I know that's actually can be quite boring sometimes. Or just budget a little bit. And you know, there's that thing, isn't there, where they say, if you see something that you want, like, you know, when you go shopping, I mean, I don't really go shopping anymore. I do a bit of online shopping. A bit of online. But, you know, if you see something that you like, sometimes come away from it and have a couple of days and be like,
cooling off
there's that
period.
thing, what is it, the cooling off period, and like, do I really need it? Do I just want it? Blah, blah, blah. That sort of thing, because loads of the time I just forget. Do you know what I mean? And it might be an outfit, and I think, I've actually got loads of stuff that I've just not worn for ages. So just kind of, you know, maybe pop something on Vinted and get yourself something back from whatever you make on that.
Do a recycle.
Do a little recycle. Just try to look a bit, don't bury your head in the sand, which is I did for years and years and years. And if you do that, it's going to come and bite you on the bum down the line. And the thing is, it'll be for something that you really, down the line, when you might meet someone, you go, right, let's get a place together. If you've got a load of debt there, it's kind of like, you know, we need to be kind of
on the same level.
And it can it could ruin something like that, and that's such a shame. But I understand that sometimes people are getting into debt because it's almost like out of their control a little bit, which is really like sad and unfair. But if you are just doing it just to have a good time and you know you can't pay it back, there is going to come a point where it's just going to be right there in front of you, and it's going to mean you can't do something that you do really want to do because you've got a load of debt. And kind of manage it. Yeah, like you were saying before, they kind of advise to, if you do get a credit card, to go up to a certain amount and pay that back, because it is good for your credit score.
Yeah.
But massively, don't bury your head in the sand.
Yeah.
Because and you do know if you're spending too much. We all do, don't we?
Of course,
and we've all done it and gone, oh, I'll deal with that, you know, later.
Down the line.
But down the line, it might, you know, affect something that you know you really wanted to do. So
don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
No
I've
problem.
loved having you on. It's been brilliant.
Thanks for having me.
And a lesson learned.
Yes.
Don't go and spend money, and don't spend beyond your means.
Exactly.